Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Faerie Conclave. I'm your host, Alec. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm super excited to be joined by an extra special guest. It's Dark Pact Cosplay. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing so good. Thank you so much for having me for this. I love talking about this silly little card game that we all play, so I'm very happy to be here.
Yes, there's nothing else I would rather be doing on a weekend morning than hanging out with you and talking about magic stuff.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, especially about a deck that is like literally all about me. So I love these kind of conversations.
Yes. Oh yeah, I love it too. It's just like I get to ask you a whole bunch of questions and talk about you for a whole hour, and I'm excited about it. Okay, before we get any further, just to introduce you a little bit, will you please tell me about what is your involvement in the Magic community?
Yeah. So I am a professional cosplayer and Magic content creator. Folks may better know me from back in 2022 when I made an Ashiok cosplay with the smoking head. I ended up winning the first Wizards of the Coast cosplay contest, which is a weird thing to say because I've been loving Magic cosplay for like over a decade. And to win the first cosplay contest was weird. Then went on to become a professional cosplayer for WotC, doing things like making Elish Norn and being Elish Norn at MagicCon Minneapolis and Philadelphia, walking the CEO of Hasbro out at like their centennial celebration as Ashiok, which was very weird. So just lots of weird stuff in Magic cosplay most of the time, and then making content around cards online and talking about cards online. That's my main spiel.
I love it. And okay, so I'm gonna flatter you a little bit here with the backstory. I have always thought of cosplay as being like a critical thing in the Magic community, and I think I was spoiled because the first game store I ever played at, I went to a pre-release for the first time at this local game store, and every pre-release they would always have a cosplayer there that they would hire to cosplay as one of the new characters. I know.
I live in Chicago and I've never heard of that.
I know, yeah, and I didn't realize like how special that was, but it was really cool. So yeah, at the time it was like original Innistrad, so the cosplayer was Avacyn for those pre-releases, and it just looked so cool. Yeah, so I got to like take pictures at the pre-release with cosplayers. I didn't really realize how cool cosplay could be, or like what other levels there were, until I saw, and I'm glad you mentioned it already because I was going to bring it up, but your Ashiok at Magic 30 in 2022. Like, I wasn't there, but I just saw the clips online, and I was just like totally blown away by the amount of skill in all of that.
Thank you. It's the magic of a depressive episode. I was going through a really bad breakup, and I made that costume to forget about it, and obviously it paid off.
Yeah, sometimes it's just like it's good to spend a lot of time in like putting it into one thing like that. I bet is really rewarding to have such a cool finished product.
Yeah, I was just really, really sad at the time, and like I got I was part of the New Perspectives grant program. I was part of the first class for that too. So like I had this once in a lifetime chance to like go to Vegas because otherwise I would have never been able to afford it. And I was like going through this breakup too, and I was like, okay, well I need to like distract myself. I have this cool thing coming up. Like let's just put everything I have into this and show up and do cool stuff. So I not only made the Ashiok cosplay, but I like reconstructed a vintage archaeological case and turned it into a deck box that I carried around with me all weekend too, with like 10 commander decks. That was so dumb, but
that's so cool.
It was a cool side project too, and like it was just I just threw myself at work because that's just how I cope, and also went to therapy. That's important too.
Oh yes. Definitely.
But I'm so glad that it turned out the way it did, because that whole costume changed my entire life, and now I get to do this cool stuff. And I mean, I've been in the hobby for nearly over a decade now at this point, and to now it's been the last like 2 or 3 years ish being like a very large part of it has been very, very rewarding for me.
Yeah, no, it's really cool to see your journey the last few years in all of this, and I love it. I love to see it.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. One other side tangent kind of related to that. I have been working on making a pair of pants for a cosplay for the first time ever in my life. And just that small piece has taken me so much time. Like, and I haven't even gotten the fabric yet. Like, I'm literally just laying out the templates and, and putting, and like trying to figure out exactly how to do everything and watching YouTube tutorials.
The basic stuff is deceptively hard. I was very lucky that I had the foundation that I did. One of my first jobs when I was a kid was working at my grandmother's clothing repair shop, Art and Zipper in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. So like from an early age, I like started like, just taking out the zippers, you put them back in, and then eventually I learned how to do them myself and learned templating there too, and learned how to work on various machines as well. And that was like my foundation. And then of course I went and got my BFA in music theater performance and was surrounded by costuming people too and wore costumes all the time. So I had a very good foundation for me to then funnel that into my nerddom.
I love it. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I that makes sense too, that you have so much like education in this, because it definitely shows that you didn't just whip up Ashiok out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was informed by probably close to a decade plus worth of, at least being around garment construction, not necessarily cosplay, but pretty close to a decade of cosplay now at this point. Actually, now that I think about it, I've been doing it since 2014, which is a lot. I'm old. Oh God.
It's incredible though. I really have. I mean, I had a lot of respect for it already, but just trying to make pants for this outfit, I'm like, now I understand. I really understand now.
Try putting pockets into it.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Yeah. There's this whole like in pockets on the inside, and you have to have it folded a certain way so that it makes sense when it's flipped the right side. Yep.
You really start to understand why like when you go to cons and people are like, oh my God, I love your costume, and then someone will be like, yes, and it has pockets too. You can see why people get so excited about that after you start making it.
Yeah, at least a few extra hours added on just for that feature.
Yeah.
So
easy.
So good. I am excited to have you on today so that I can interview you about one of your favorite decks.
Yes.
And yeah, so I think it's time we get into that. But really quick, before we do, I always shout out one of my patrons at the Conclave Mentor patron level. So Lunchbonks, thank you so much for being a patron. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we love it. Hell yeah. Okay, I'm excited. So my first question for you is, who is the commander of the deck that we're going to be talking about today, and what inspired you to build it in the first place?
Yeah, it's me. I'm the commander.
Yeah.
That's such a weird statement to say. So it's Keeper of Dark Pacts. It's an unknown event card that Gavin Verhey designed specifically for MagicCon Chicago, which is great. That was my home con. So Gavin, I think, surmised after watching like 2 episodes of Shuffle Up and Play where I got out a Black Market Connections both times, that I really like mono black draw. He designed this card for me, and he was very, very right. I do love drain and draw effects. I like when I first started playing Commander, I was like a big Sign in Blood, Night Whisper, kind of throw that into every deck when I first started making decks. So that the inspiration for me in making it was just like, it's literally me. I have to build this deck and rule 0 it. And one of those cards where I feel like even if I walk up to a table and people aren't super great on unknown cards or test cards, you could just be like, it's literally a card Gavin Verhey designed of me. Can I play this? And anybody will probably say yes.
Yeah. There's no way I would always say yes to this. It's how like the card's designed by Gavin and is produced and sold in an actual like Wizards product, so it's the most real.
It's just about as close as you can get. And
yes.
Honestly, I did not think that this was gonna happen to me as soon as it did, which is wild because, like I said, I haven't been in the creator space that long. It's been like maybe 2.5, 3 years. And to have, Gavin of all people design a card of me, you'd assume you would need like Olivia Gobert Hicks worth of time. Like,
Mm,
not to date her or anything like that, but like she's been in the hobby for a minute, right? And like other
yeah.
folks too, or like Prof, and to be like in the same group as like them being released as cards is just like I keep getting my mind blown by the generosity of this community, especially the folks that work over at Wizards and design these cards. And that was just another moment of like, wow, I really made it. I am actually part of this thing.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I just did the Unknown event in Vegas last month, and
Yeah.
I loved seeing all of the like content creator cards in those. I love
Yeah.
them, and I got a couple who like of people who were there at the event, and I just had to like go give them the cards, and I was like, "This is yours. It's
I
you,
had
and
the
it's
same
yours."
thing happen to me at Chicago too. I had like 5 people be like, "Here, did you get one? Did you get one?" I thankfully got one right away. So like I'd let people keep them and like drew on them too for them and signed them and all that stuff.
It's
It's
so
such a fun
fun.
like little scavenger hunt every con too to like see who gets a card and like getting to see if you're the person that gets to tell someone like, "Hey, you've become a card. Did you see?" And that's such a fun element
So
of
cool.
Magic cons. Yeah, you just don't get that like anywhere else. You really don't with any
Yeah,
fan community.
it's true. Yeah, the amount of like community involvement from Wizards and from like specific people at Wizards too is just
Hmm.
really incredible, and I think it adds a lot to just the community and also the events because like you said, everyone's running around like, did you see all these new cards of you and these other
Yeah,
people who are here?
or the
It's
hunt to get them all too. Like people get real
yeah.
serious about getting one of every single one, and like it's really hard to find these on eBay afterwards too. I was like trying to
Ooh.
see if like my test card was worth any money or something like that, and just
Yeah.
you can't find them listed anywhere. So it's very difficult to
Interesting.
find if you're not like going online and like asking the cadre of MTG, Twitter, or now Blue Sky folks that post about this stuff if they have one and they're willing to give it up.
So good.
Hmm.
So okay, so for yours, the Keeper of Dark Pacts,
Yeah.
would you like to read off exactly what the effect is because it's awesome?
Yes. Yeah. So Keeper of Dark Pacts is 4 and a black for a legendary creature, human wizard, rare card. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and draw a card, then double the amount of life you lose and the cards you draw for the rest of the game from this ability. This is true even if this leaves the battlefield and returns. It's a 4/4 as well. So essentially, once I cast this card, it's going to start accumulating this multiplicative draw effect and draw and drain effect. So no matter how many times gets removed or bounced or even put back into my deck, if it comes back out, it's going to remember what the new number is going to be. So, 1, 2, then 4, then 8, 16, 32,
Yeah, it kind of seems like that wouldn't really work with the rules the way it's written, but I have played a Skullbriar commander deck, which
Yeah, yeah.
kind of it's
It's a
like a
similar
similar,
thing, yeah.
yeah, it like keeps its counters even if it leaves the battlefield and goes back to the command zone, and I think this is
Yeah.
kind of a similar thing. Like this could totally, like, it makes sense in my mind in the game of Magic for this to be
Oh, yeah.
a legal card.
Yes, yes, it definitely works, and the drawback side of it too doesn't make it like too busted. Of course, we play
Yeah.
into that drawback very much in this deck.
Ooh.
And I actually have to keep like I have a 30-sided die from like the M30 secret layer that came out, and I use it specifically for tracking the amount of draws. This
Okay,
card's
that's
the only
fun.
dice big enough. Yeah.
That's
Usually I
so
don't really
good.
get past like 16.
Still though, that's incredible. I like that you track that
Yeah.
too. It's probably fun to see like how many cards you've drawn off of this at the end of the game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This also kind of reminds me of some other mono black commanders. There's
Yeah.
I'm not going to remember off the top of my head, but there are at least a couple that kind of play with making yourself lose a lot of life and then
Yeah,
either
yeah.
rewarding you for that or like incentivizing you in some way for that. So yeah, I'm excited to see what you've done in that realm for this
A lot
deck
of them
too.
have made it in here, so.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So my next question for you is, what is this deck's history? Like, what have you done with it since you first put it together?
Yeah, it's been fairly the same. There's been some additions here or there. There's a couple through lines through it that kind of work out, but like the big thing that like inspired me first off to like build it was the idea. I had a lich sitting in my collection, like I think a revised lich, whatever the white border printing of it is. And I've been trying to find a deck for that to sit somewhere in, right? And I had this like light bulb moment of like, oh, the Lich only cares about, I think it was damage. Yes, yeah. Lich only cares about damage, and my card causes life loss. So, essentially, I could throw down a Lich. Lich wouldn't care about the life loss because life loss is not equal to damage. So you would get all the benefits of being able to draw and being immortal at the same time. Of course, you do become a little bit of a glass cannon, but I love the idea of just laying it all out there and just becoming beyond the rules at that point. I think that's just the coolest thing ever. So I kind of based a lot of my picks around that and trying to build around that. And most of the rest of the deck kind of facilitates this idea of just drawing out as much of the deck as humanly possible. It's very easy to see about 50% of the deck anytime you play it if you're playing well, which is kind of nuts. But yeah, otherwise it's stayed pretty stagnant. There's been like a few, I think I added a few cards that have come in that are like life gain, life drain related, because that's another through line that works throughout this deck as well too.
Nice. Yeah, I really like that Lich interaction. It's like using some little rules quirks to your advantage. And yeah, it's cool that squares are rectangles, but rectangles aren't squares with life loss and damage.
It's so weird, and I love that.
That's awesome.
One of my favorite ways to play into that too is like the life swap effect with Lich, right? Like a Repay in Kind or Magus of the Mirror, Profane Transfusion. Repay in Kind is just you win the game if you because make everybody's life total 0 immediately.
Yeah.
Magus just swaps your life total with someone else, and Profane does the same thing, but you get to create a XX colorless horror artifact creature where X is the difference between the two players' life totals, which is crazy. Of course, it's probably going to be very large difference because you're trying to take out probably the best player at the table.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite through lines in this deck. It's just like the power word kill effect.
Yeah, it's real too. You have a deck that can change life totals so easily like that, and then you just trade them around with people. It can get really strong in a game of Commander.
Very easily.
Nice. Okay, I love that so much. It's just like I've always been a mono black lover, and this deck is it's right up my alley. So I feel at home.
Glad to provide.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so what is it about this deck that you just like playing? Like what makes you come back to it time and time again, besides it being like such a unique commander to yourself?
Yeah, it really is. I kind of evolved as a player over time and went from like a very like Timmy / attack phase, swingy with big monsters phase, and I've slowly grown into my control phase. So I like the way that this deck allows me to sit back, watch the table, and just play control, like keep myself protected, or even let my opponents bring my life total down. It doesn't matter to me. Eventually I'm going to make that low life total their problem, right? So it's just a lot of fun to be able to like play the machinations behind the scenes sort of villain sort of thing, and like letting everything happen around you and then coming out of nowhere and just comboing out to win if you can win, which I enjoy that, and it allows you to play a little bit of politics too of people around the table too, because you're not necessarily swinging, you're not doing anything that seems super duper impactful too, so you can play the woe is me card very easily too while you're sitting back and trying to gain all your combo pieces.
I do love decks that kind of let you do stuff like that, where you can like, that you have the ability to do some big moves, but you can kind of like hold back and wait and see what everyone else is up to before you commit to that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just very, very fun and I think plays into some of the best elements of Commander, which is the multiplayer and the political aspects
Yeah.
that you can get in. I mean, you can build as best a deck you want, but sometimes it's even more advantageous to just make the table do what you need them to do.
It's true. I've been playing a lot of 1v1 Commander lately, mostly because it's hard to get 4 people together sometimes.
Yeah, it can be.
And I do love 1v1 Commander, but there are a lot of instances where I realize that my deck building and like the kind of decks I like to play are really leaning into the multiplayer aspect of it. And then I'm playing 1v1 and I'm like, ooh, actually a lot of this stuff I'm trying to do just does not function here.
Same thing happens to me when I draft or do like cube or anything like that. I did CubeCon recently, and I was just realized so quickly that like, oh man, I'm not built for 1v1. It's trying to get Dana Fisher to teach me how to do this right. She's like, you just don't think about 1v1 at all, do you? Yeah,
it's so interesting. No, it's an entirely different game, honestly.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
My next question for you is, when you sit down to play this game, what are, with this deck, like what goals do you have in mind as you're playing out those first few turns?
Yeah, the biggest thing, I mean, obviously getting the commander out is really key, because once that draw effect starts happening, that's when you can start finding your answers, essentially. So big things that I like to do are, get the commander out, get some control pieces in hand, like creature removal, enchantment removal, potentially my one counter spell in black.
Yeah.
It's just so funny. I love countering and not blue. I think it's just the funniest thing to see a player's look on their face when you're like, oh yeah, I counter that. Black mana or white mana, red mana, maybe even green. I think there's some green ones. So those are the big ones. And then insurance policies as well too, as we're starting to build up the combo, right? Like going down to 0 life is really cool and awesome, but if your Repaying Kind gets countered or someone attempts to destroy your Lich enchantment, you need to have some way to like at least last another rotation to see if you can recover in some way, shape, or form, right? So I try to incorporate that with like spells like Stunning Reversal, which puts you back to like 1 life if you were to lose the game next time. Also, going down to 0 life isn't necessarily the only way to win this deck too. There's a lot of life gain and drain. So I've won a couple games with it where I don't necessarily need to go down to 0 life. I'm just doing so much life draining on my opponents and building up my own life total that I just keep on holding up walls and then draining people out through spells and effects like Gary. Gary's great.
Ooh, yes. It's just like such classic mono black, like really leaning into the strengths of the color. Okay, and also not to get like too sidetracked here, but you mentioned cards in black that are copying like blue effects.
Yes.
And that made me think of this card you have in here that is one of my favorite pet cards of all time, and that's Temporal Extortion.
Yes, I love that card so freaking much.
Yes,
I love when cards bend the color theory to the nth degree, but still like retain their original color flavor to them too. Like, how many people know about a mono black spell that can give you an extra turn? Like,
nobody does.
Like, no, yeah, that doesn't exist. But it also plays into my other side thing that I run in here. This is another through line of trying to win in the deck, or at least take out an opponent in the deck. It's making an opponent lose half their life, because I think, the opponent would have to pay half their life if they were going to counter that effect. So I run damage doublers in there into like let me see, Wound Reflection, Bloodletter of Aquazats as well too. So you'll have those on the board. So like you play Temporal Extortion, you're getting that extra turn regardless, or somebody's going to die.
Yes.
And that's
so good.
It's just so mono black and hilarious. I love those cards that just completely break convention and make people go, what is that card? What? I've never seen that before.
It's so good, and I think this is a card I force a lot in a bunch of my decks, and it doesn't always work out because somebody's like, I'll just half my life, like I'll take 14 so you don't get an extra turn or something. And, But this is the ideal situation where they don't really have that choice. Oh yeah, and I guess we hadn't read off exactly what this card does, but because no, at least when I play it, nobody ever knows what it is.
I can read it off for you if you want.
Yes, please. I'd love that.
Yeah. So it's quadruple black, God bless, a sorcery. When you play Temporal Extortion, any player may pay half his or her life rounded up. If that player does counter Temporal Extortion, then you take an extra turn after this one. It is hilarious and so much
good.
Fun that you can have an extra turn spell in black. It's so funny.
Yeah. I've always been obsessed with this card. Like extra turn spells in blue, I could not be less interested in that. I'm just like, I won't play any of that. I don't really care that much.
Games long, right? But
yeah.
If I'm throwing this down, my goal is to use that extra turn to end the game.
Yes, exactly. Especially when you can use that pay half life thing to your advantage.
Yeah, Wound Reflection and Bloodletter are just so good in this deck too, especially with all like the draining effects as well too.
Yeah,
even if you're not getting the Temporal Extortion out. And I have so many of these like pay or make target player lose half their life, like Peer into the Abyss, Unstoppable Slasher, Rush of Dread as well too. Those are just, I call that like my power word kill combo wombos in there. I guess I do also run similar to like Sanguine Bond and Exquisite Blood combos in there too, but I'm mostly there for the draining effects there and the life gain effects there. I'm most likely not going to throw those down unless it's like very late game and like I need an answer to win the game essentially. Those combos make me feel a little bit icky, so I avoid them.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's fair. It kind of ends the game immediately, which sometimes is something you really do want when the game has gone very long. Yes. But yeah, you don't always.
I gotta be very selective with that. I'm not throwing that down turn 5. That feels bad.
Totally. Yeah, it is one of those things that mono black has. Like, I think monocolor decks should lean into their strengths because they tend to have pretty big weaknesses too. But and one of mono black's strengths is definitely the life gain and drain combos.
Yeah. The power at all costs sort of thing as well too, where you're using life as a resource. I love the idea of like letting your ambition guide absolutely everything and putting everything all out on the line for that one chance to win. It's just so good. So mono black, and it's the reason that I love the color so much.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'm starting to see some similarities with that and also your personality, which I love.
Yes. It is very much my color, and I love that. It's always been. I knew from the second I started playing the game that it was my color, because I think I've told the story a bunch of times, but literally it was like some silly little starter deck from Born of the Gods that I saw on a shelf at Target somewhere with Eater of Hope as it was a demon as like the face card on it, and it was the flavor text that on the bottom that got me. It was gods can be appeased, demons however ... It's like, that's so good. I need to play this card right now and learn how to play this game.
That's so fun. Yeah, I think that's one thing that's really special about this game is just like the base colors are so easy to identify with when you like find the one that represents you. And
color identity is just done so well in this game, and how they intersect and like even change from different color combinations as well too. It's just so easy to find yourself in not even in one color but in a color combination as well too, and you see it in all content creators. They really sit very heavily within their color associations, which is so fun. You just get to see people's personalities bloom and blossom through that.
Yes, it's true. And I always like thinking about like what colors would I be, what colors would my friends be in my play group. And yeah, it's just such a fun thing to talk about and theorize about. Going back to your deck, here's something I'm interested in talking about. What would you say are some of this deck's weaknesses?
Removal of anything that I've been able to get Planeswalker and enchantment removal in there pretty easily, but mostly the control elements can deal with creatures on the board. But if there's like a land out there or an artifact that's doing some crazy stuff, non-creature artifact, name other permanent types, because
Yeah.
You know, obviously countering spells as well too. I have Imp's Mischief, but that is one potential solution, a sea of 99 cards.
Yeah.
So being reactive outside of enchantment, planeswalkers, and most people don't play planeswalkers anymore, to be honest, these days. So creature enchantment interaction's good, but outside of that, that's pretty hard to deal with. Trying to think of whatever through lines really mess with this deck too. I mean, if something's super interactive too and like can take out like my permanents on the board, they're keeping me alive past 0 life. Like, yeah, I have my
Mm.
insurance policies, but they can only get me so far, right? Like if you catch me in the middle of having Lich down and like counter my repaying kind, or I have to use my stunning reversal to prevent my death, and I have maybe like two opponents ahead of me, I'm probably gonna die after that. So it's very, very all or nothing. Like it can be extremely powerful, but it's very easy for opponents to have decent interaction and can like measure out when I'm gonna win to stop me there. So a lot of what I have to do is just make sure that opponents are tapped down or resources are gone or hands are empty as much as possible before I attempt to do all these scary shenanigans.
I am happy that Mono Black has come a long way in terms of interacting with things that aren't just
Mhm.
creatures or planeswalkers.
Yeah.
I remember back when I first started playing Commander and building a Mono Black deck, I was playing the like 7 mana colorless spells that could destroy any
Yeah.
permanent just like for enchantments and artifacts.
Yeah.
And I just accepted that at the time. And it was still bad then too.
Yeah. It's really tough to put anything in that's like an interaction piece that's like above 3 mana. So I just accept the fact that I get enchantments, planeswalkers, and so many creature interactions. Which most of the time, getting rid of a creature is probably the answer because that's a lot. A lot of decks focus on those. So
Yeah, I've also kind of just accepted that this color I'm playing has its specialties, and if something else is a
mhm.
problem, somebody else can deal with that.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we,
there's two other players that can hopefully assist you if it's a problem for you, it'll likely be a problem for them, right?
exactly, yeah. And if they can't either, then they probably just win and we start a new game, which is also fine with me.
Totally fine too, right? As long as you get to do the thing and show that you could have, right?
Yeah, exactly. So good. Okay, so I am excited to get into some of the specific cards in this deck.
Yes.
What are some notable cards in here that
Mhm.
like you feel like are really perfect and fill specific roles in the deck?
Yeah. We kind of talked about Lich a little bit
Mm.
here, which is that here, I should probably like read out Lich. This is
Oh yeah.
very old wording on this. Another quadruple black card. Ugh, I love so many black pips and cards. It's enchantment. You lose all life. If you gain life later in the game, instead draw one card from your library for each life. For each point of damage you suffer, you must destroy one of your cards in play. Creatures destroyed this way cannot be regenerated. You lose if this enchantment is destroyed, or if you suffer a point of damage without sending a card to the graveyard. That's a lot of text.
Yeah.
But it's essentially you go to 0 life. If you start taking damage, you got to start taking permanents off the board for each damage you take. But if you gain life, you get to draw cards. This is really scary
Mm.
with Sheoldred because I run Sheoldred
Ooh.
in here. So if I start gaining life from drawing cards, I can draw out my whole deck and die. So I have to make sure Sheoldred's not on the board while I have this on the board too, because that Sheoldred's also a very good drain gain sort of a factor card. But I think the most like meta card in this deck, if that's the proper way to use the term, is Pact Weapon, which does a very similar thing. And it's an equipment. It's 3 and a black for artifact equipment. Long as Pact Weapon is attached to a creature, you don't lose the game for having 0 or less life. Whenever equipped creature attacks, draw a card and reveal it. The creature gets +X until end of turn, and you lose X life, where X is the card's mana value. To equip, you discard a card. So equipping Pact Weapon to Keeper of Dark Pacts is about as
Ooh.
flavorful as you can get in this deck. I've done it a couple times. It's really, really cool. And it adds this really cool like buff and draw effect too. So you could potentially get some commander damage in with Keeper of Dark Pacts. There isn't any keywords on me, so you gotta be swinging in with a pretty open board state. But I think it's more important for having that you don't lose the game for having 0 or less life effect there. That's just very, very good.
Yeah, I think that's such a cool way to like change the rules of the game, where it's like actually getting to 0 life does not, it's not enough. You're gonna have to do a little bit more than that.
Yeah,
And
and it makes
yeah.
opponents reevaluate what they're doing too, because like everything's so combat oriented too. When they realize that like, oh, I don't have the enchantment removal, and I'll usually have like a lightning greaves or something too on top of my creature too, so I can't get rid of your creature. Oh,
Mm,
okay. So like attacking Evan doesn't do anything. So
yeah.
they start focusing on the other players, and then I can start accumulating my scary power word kill combos.
Yes. A card that I found very early when I started playing was Platinum Angel, and I just thought it was the most busted
So
thing of all
good.
time. Yeah.
My first thought with having a Lich card was like building a, oh God, that like black white angel that like her effect is you pay a life and you bounce her back to your hand, but you can do that in response to its effect as many times as you want. So you could drain yourself out as much as you want as well too, and like doing life swap effects with that. It was like one of the first like legendary like black white angels. I can't remember what her name is.
I
I
want to
think
say
she's on the reserve list
Selenia.
too. I think it's Selenia. Yeah, yeah, I think you're right in that.
Yeah, that's a cool
She's
one
good.
too.
Yeah, yeah. I almost went black
Yep.
white for this like concept, and I had like a million and one decks trying to concepts trying to figure out how this works. But I think it was just so much better when it's just pure black mana
It
associated
feels
with this
right.
deck, especially with the 4 black pips on Lich. It makes the most sense.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of abandoned deck lists online of decks that kind of similar to this, but I've also been really interested in the idea of like the black devotion, because there are a lot of cards that have like 3,
Yeah.
4 black pips.
The main inspiration, well, some of the main inspiration for this is that like I first like kind of put together an Urbos deck that was inspired by, I think it was Jumbo Commanders, mono black, like nearly no creatures, all enchantments on the board, like just devastating effects. Trying to think, like Hollows, he had like Hollows Eve in it, like the old
Ooh.
like mono black, like big fat spells. I think like a Nether Void was in there as well too. All those cards from that set, I can't remember which set it was, but that was a big inspiration of just like going really hard mono black control, minimal creatures, and just controlling the board and draining out opponents. So shout out Jumbo Commander.
Yeah. I love it, and I feel like the kind of combination of all of those concepts works perfectly with your commander,
Mhm.
which is really cool that you were like trying to find a home for all of these things for so long, and then it just ended up being
Yeah, and
your
it
own
was
card.
me all along.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gavin.
There's definitely a lesson to be learned there.
There really
And
is. Just
it's
hang on
cute.
to cards. Sometimes, especially with the amount of stuff that gets printed, even if it's not a card printed of you, like eventually cards find a place, and that's why I really like have a hard time getting rid of cards. To be honest, it's just like, oh yeah, like this is interesting, and I don't have a place for it right now, but I'm gonna throw it in a binder. In like 5 years, there's gonna be some commander that comes out and is gonna make this like 32-cent card at least $2. You know.
Yeah.
Cards like Neheb did that for a lot of effects too.
Ooh,
Like,
yes.
yeah.
That's one of the things I really like about Commander 2 is you never know when some random new legend will just make some weird old like obscure cards
Mm.
really relevant again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's the best part about the game, and makes me feel like my cards kind of somewhat matter. So that's great.
Yeah.
Keep doing that, Wizards.
Yes, please. Okay, so if you had to choose one card that you think is like, which I have a feeling I know what it is, but
Mhm.
one card that is the MVP of this deck, or like the most synergistic card that you want
Mm.
to, that you would like to see every game you play, what card would that be?
I might go ahead and say, just with the combination of the commander, because it's so funny, I really love pulling out my Sheldred while my commander is out, because it essentially turns my egregious draws into net life gain.
Yeah.
Which is so funny. And then, my opponents, which inevitably will be drawing cards as well too, just take crap tons of damage combo that with like a card that says whenever you gain life, opponents lose that much life too, and it just gets so multiplicative so fast. So that's like a very fun through line too, to like go alternate outside of like going to 0 life, just having an egregious amount of life because of all the draws that I'm doing. It's a good time.
No, that totally makes sense. And I think the abilities on Shieldred also encapsulate like what this deck is trying to do in a nutshell. So
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a good time, and I mean she's scary too on the board too, having a 4/5 Death Toucher. A big part of this deck is also just throwing out things that people don't want to like interact with on the board too, like that and like a Phyrexian Obliterator too.
ooh.
Just get like Shieldred Obliterator on the board and just like take out any flyers that are coming your way, and no one's gonna be swinging at you regardless.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned this because I have always loved black creatures for being just randomly having the best keywords that are always nice.
Death Touch is so good. It was one of my favorite keywords when I first started playing too.
Yeah.
And it's just such a good deterrent because people don't want to get rid of their stuff unless they're swinging with a really wide board at you, a bunch of tokens or something. But they aren't going to send their big commander at you if you have a chance to take it out with a Death Toucher. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you playing. It looks like you have Vampire Nighthawk in here.
That is one of my favorite cards.
Yes.
Like when I made my first like pile of 60 card silliness that wasn't really any format, but I just wanted to play Magic at my kitchen table. Like it was 4 copies of Vampire Nighthawk because it's just so freaking good. All those keywords, and it just encapsulates like a lot of what I'm trying to do in the deck and keeps it so simple. So it's like kind of a pet card for me too, and something I remember from when I first started playing the game. So it plays into that life gain aspect. You have that control with the Death Touch. It's a flyer too, right? Am I remembering?
It is,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a flyer, so it can deal with other threats coming from the air too. So it's just covers a lot of really good bases, and it's a very good early game card to get out there to start bolstering up life totals, preventing very bad attacks coming your way. It's just a great card.
This has always been a pet card of mine too because I can't remember which core set it was. I think it might have been 2011, but one of the earliest like precons that I got, which was a 60 card, like I guess it was standard, but it wasn't really. I think it had 3 copies of Vampire Nighthawk, and it just like tore apart my playgroups meta at the time, which was just like strictly kitchen table stuff.
Yeah.
But it was just like I would get a Vampire Nighthawk down and my friends could not do anything against it. Unbeatable.
So good. It's always been so good, and I love that something that simple is like maintained its like place in Magic for as long as it has too. Because like so many things get so complex so quickly in this game. It's just so simple. 3 keywords. It's a 2/3, and it gains life, kills things, and it flies. So it's just so like
what more could you
down
want?
to the core of it.
Yeah. This is a MTG Foundations for sure. Like, I love Vampire Nighthawk. Okay.
Did the Vampire Nighthawk not make it into Foundations? Dang.
I actually don't know. I just kind of assumed it did.
A lot of good stuff though from Foundations. I did end up putting the Bloodthirsty Conqueror in here as well too to get that. It's one of the sides of Sanguine Bond / Exquisite Blood. I can't remember which side. Yeah, whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life, and it's also a flying Death Toucher 5/5. Obscenely good. Obscenely good. Does all the things that I told you about, but makes the life gain aspect a little bit better. So it's like kind of like Vampire Nighthawk on steroids, I guess.
Yeah, it's like Daddy Vampire Nighthawk, which did get reprinted in Foundations. So
great.
Yeah, let's go.
I had a feeling that's a card you should be throwing in there, right? It's one of those core creatures for black that just needs to be there, like zombies, vampires. You think of that as one of the vampires that should come in.
Agreed. Yes. Yeah. Definitely co-sign on this. Okay. If you had to pick a couple of cards that you would consider pet cards in this deck, aside from the rant on Vampire Nighthawk we just went on.
Yeah. One of the first ones. So there's obviously a lot of control elements in here too. This is something I really only throw down if like it's near the end of the game and I have like other opponents that are going really, really fast and I need to slow them down. And I have access to probably like double black mana or something through like Cryptghast or something like that. I run Nether Void in my deck. I
Ooh.
don't run. I proxy this Nether Void because screw the original artist, they're a Nazi.
Yep.
So I have my own proxy printing that I printed for MagicCon Chicago in the deck, which is art done by Seven Artem, amazing artist. I commissioned them and did like a numbered series of Nether Voids that I handed out at MagicCon Chicago.
Yes,
But
I have one.
yeah,
So thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. It was a great little giveaway that I did. I'm glad that so many people loved them and they disappeared instantly once I announced them at like I had like a before party at MagicCon Chicago. I handed them out to some creators then, and then the buzz just went crazy. And like every other person was like, "Do you still have the Nether Void? Do you still have the Nether Voids?" Just all of them went, which is great. But Nether Void, I should read this off. It is 3 and a black for a world enchantment. World enchantments are weird, so only one world enchantment can be on the board at any time. There's not many world enchantments anymore, so if
Yeah.
someone else were to play another world enchantment after you have Nether Void, I guess it would get destroyed. I think that's how the rules work with it, but don't quote me on that. I've never seen it happen.
Yep.
Um, so whenever a player casts a spell, counter it unless that player pays 3 life. Or
Oh,
3 mana, sorry, not 3 life. So it essentially
brutal.
makes everything cost 3 more, which
Yep.
is really, really annoying. But if you got double mana, you're typically okay, or you're just trying to stop your opponent from doing something really, really crazy in the next rotation, and you know you have the mana to survive another rotation, then win it out, essentially. Or maybe even take out the enchantment like at the end of your opponent's turn.
Yes.
Which is something I've done before too. It's just like lay it down at the end of the turn and then like withering torment it away. I think that's one that can take out enchantments. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, that's pretty cool. One thing I really like about mono black that is definitely a strength that people should keep in mind is the mana doublers are so strong.
They're ridiculously good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big part of the deck, to be honest, too, is like getting a bunch of like really good mono black ramp pieces, or like cost reduction too is one of my favorite things too. Like I run Crick in here as well too, to just like pay that Phyrexian mana for things, which is super duper funny. I run Crick and God, Defiler Flesh too also does that, where you can turn your mono black pips into a Phyrexian mana, which is great. Or like a Bubbling Muck to double things up, Nicara Revenant, Cryptghast. Scourge Familiar is freaking funny too, especially when you're drawing out half your deck. You can just, I should read that one out here. It's 4 and a black for Summon Imp. Flying, you can choose to discard a card, add a black mana to your mana pool, play this ability as a mana source. So get a humongous hand from all your crazy draws and just start discarding cards to create black mana. It's so funny.
If you're starting to do that, I think it's
over.
probably GG. Yeah.
If I'm pitching cards, you know it's probably the end.
Yes. So while you were playing this deck, do you have a favorite like in-game moment that you've had, and what is the story behind it?
Oh yeah, I did like a power word kill on myself where I had like a wound reflection out. I had Dark Pact or Keeper of Dark Pacts equipped with the pack weapon on, and then I targeted myself with like a Rush of Dread where I made myself lose half my life and doubled the amount of damage or something like that. I think that's what happened. Something similar to that. And essentially made myself go down to 0, right? And then did a life swap effect, and that was very satisfying.
So good. You're like, here's my 4 to 5 card combo that ends up with
Pretty
you.
much. I'm like, how can I make all these cards work? And the great thing is like you don't need necessarily like the exact combination of 3 cards. There's a lot of ways to just kind of like mix and match things and make it work. Like there is like the most efficient way to do it, but there's plenty of different ways you can go about it, which works for my head because I don't want to like continuously play the same combination of cards over and over and over again. It's not fun for me.
Totally. Yeah, and I think a lot of these have like they're still good enough on their own. It's not like just for these combos.
Yeah. They stand alone pretty well. It's not going to be devastating it would be devastating if my Lich left the board, but
True, yeah.
If anything else leaves or if anything else doesn't work out, I can typically kind of recover after that.
Good point.
Throw a lot of
Yes.
recursion in this deck too, because it's black and you got to be able to do that. It's a fun
Yeah.
time.
Okay, so if you had some advice that you wanted to give to people who out there who are interested in this deck, people potentially myself also, if people out there wanted to build a Keeper of Dark Pacts deck, what advice would you give them?
First off, I'd be so flattered if other people played this deck. If I saw this out in the wild, I'd literally scream. I think the biggest thing that I can impart on people is just patience with this deck. This deck thrives off of doing very minimal things in the beginning, and you're like, the nature of Commander now is like everything's so much faster now. People are getting out things quicker and doing more impactful things earlier on. And this is very much a deck that wants to sit back and allow your opponents to do those things, right? Like, let them hit you for 10. Let your opponent get the big flyer out. As tempting as it is to take it out early on, maybe let them do a little damage to you or deal more damage to your opponents as well, too. Just be as demure as possible with it, right? Because you're going to be doing some very scary things late on, and you want your opponents to drain out all the stuff that they have, their interaction that they have on themselves or early game, so you can have a very crazy mid to late game with this deck. I think that would be the best advice I could give.
Nice. I like that too, because like people who like playing that way will gravitate towards decks like this, where if you like seeing everybody else do their thing and have enough time to do that, and then also feel like you have impact and can't stop it when you want to,
exactly.
Cool.
And I love letting people actually play the game too, right? And I genuinely enjoy seeing how people build their decks, right, too. So this is like a really good deck to just like sit back and watch other people play for a little bit, but take notes, right? See what you got to deal with later on. Like, it's not necessarily sitting back and letting other people play the game, but you have to strategize and think about how you're going to take each one of them out individually or all of them at the same time, right?
Totally. I like it so much. It's just like, this deck is right up my alley, and I appreciate you letting me ask you a whole bunch of questions about it today.
Of course. I love talking about this deck so much.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to shout out when it comes to talking about this deck or about yourself?
I guess the biggest thing is life is a resource, baby, right? Like, don't be afraid to use it. And like, I think one of the greatest things that players can do is play around disadvantages that are inherently built into like card designs or even like color designs, right? I think it shows like really cool ingenuity, right? Like, the idea of losing this much life would be extremely detrimental to the idea of like a green or a blue player, but being able to play into that strength and make it be your almost your killing weapon at the same time is such a fun thing. And it's something that I try to bring into a lot of my deck designs as well too, is like making faults like your win conditions, right? So play with that more. That's so much fun and shows your ingenuity and gets people to like rethink how colors can work and how magic can work too. So do more of that. It's fun.
Yes. Okay. I couldn't have said it any better myself. I totally agree. One of the many reasons I love playing black in Commander.
Yeah. It's a good time. It's why I have like 4 mono black decks.
Yep. Sweet. Okay, so if anybody out there would like to come find you and like follow you online, where is it that they can find you?
I am Dark Pact Cosplay on all things. I recently started up a Blue Sky account, so come see me over there because like Twitter's dying. That's like the main spot where I'm posting all my silly little thoughts at 3 a.m. I also make a lot of TikToks, Instagram Reels, all that good stuff, and pictures on Instagram as well. I'm on Facebook, I guess. It's mostly just recycled Instagram stuff, so go to Instagram instead. Those are the main spots. I guess another thing that will be happening in the near future, I'm in the works on this, so I am starting a D&D stream probably in January that's going to feature a bunch of Magic content creators. We're doing a game that is based around the MTG universe, alternate timeline, but uses elements of Magic the Gathering as the setting, the multiverse per se. It is a custom plane. That is going to be out in January, like I said, so keep an eye out for that. It'll probably be up on Twitch for streaming, and then I'm gonna probably make a YouTube channel. As much as I said I'd never do that, I'll probably make a YouTube channel for it and learn video editing. We'll see how that goes, but I'm excited for the streaming aspect of it. It'll be a lot of fun. I picked some really, really cool people to be part of the player cast for that, and I get to bring back my D&D chops. It'll be a good time. It'll be fun.
Yes. Wait, that sounds really cool. So are you going to be the DM for this?
Yes, I am the DM for that. I should clarify that. Yes, I am going to be the DM. And this is based off of a custom plane that I made like in the middle of COVID that I played with some friends here, and I've tweaked it since and changed the story quite a bit since then. So this will be a new experience for the players, but I feel like there's not like a lot of D&D streaming about like magic settings. Like there's obviously like D&D books that like the Theros book, there's the Strixhaven book, but I don't see a lot of content around that. And my main thought was like, I love magic as the idea of like a foundation similar to D&D's lore that you can just take some of the elements, run with it, and change things entirely. So I'm hoping this will be a new thing, because I don't like just like doing what everybody else does. That's not what I do. So I'm trying to do something a little bit new, a little bit interesting. And I think there's a lot of like cross play with people that like Magic, people like D&D. It's very clear with how they're going with the Magicons too. They're incorporating a lot of D&D elements into them now too. So I'm hoping to kind of get on that wave and, bring in some of the things that I've made in the past and hopefully make something cool for you all to enjoy.
Yeah. Okay. This is perfect. I'm excited for this.
Yeah. I'm glad. I've been making like a PowerPoint for my players like a couple hours prior to doing this too. So I've been getting really, really, really excited about it. It's going to be so much fun. The people too that I picked for this are just peak amazing personalities in the community too, so I'm just excited to get to hang out with them, to be honest.
Yes, hell yeah. That's honestly what D&D is all about too, is improvising with your friends,
to sit with people at a table for a few hours.
Yes. That's what we're all here for. It's true.
yes, absolutely.
Nice. Okay, well, yeah, so definitely go follow Evan on all the things that I'll have linked in the episode description. Make sure you're watching those socials around January.
Yeah.
For the new show on Twitch, which sounds sick. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it too. It'll be a good time.
Sweet. Okay, I think that's everything we've got for you today, Evan. So,
awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah. I had a blast. This is just fun sitting with piles of cards and be like, ooh, look at these.
Yes. It's the best. Yeah, I love this so much. And yeah, so I appreciate you for joining me today. And I can't wait to hang out again.
Yeah. Will you be doing Chicago at all, potentially, maybe?
Oh, yes. I've got a couple things I need to figure out to make it work, like financial wise, but I'm planning on it.
It's expensive. I get it.
Yeah.
But I hope to see you there. It was fun bumping into each other at the con every now and again at the after party too. That was a good time. And it is always fun to just chill out and hang out, and we'll see if I'm actually hired for this con or not. But I kind of have like a plan of like potentially doing the cosplay contest. It's like I haven't done that in a while, and I've kind of like asked other like folks that do the professional stuff for WotC if they feel like it'd be weird if I would do it, and they're like, no, like long as you're not hired at the con, it should be fine. And I'm like, yeah, and there'll be an excuse to like make something that they only really ask you to make stuff that's like for the current sets, and I want to make some stuff that like isn't gonna happen anymore, like Sauron. That'd be so much fun.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be cool.
I have an idea for a flaming head and like the Plantier that's built into the armor. I have like a holographic Plantier design that I think would be cool to have like the flaming eye moving in the Plantier. That'd be so much fun.
Okay, I love seeing you getting hired for these events.
But also, I mean, I'd still be making money if I win, right?
True, yes.
and remind them too that like, yes, I am the best. No.
You got to come back every once in a while just to to show everyone
Yeah,
who's on
it
top.
would be fun. It would be fun to do it again. So I think regardless, I'm gonna start working on Sauron like come December, and if they reach out to me, I'll just drop it and maybe put it together for Atlanta or something like that, and that's fine.
Hell yeah.
I'm flexible.
Exactly. Yeah. It'll be a blast either way.
Yeah, it really will be.
Thank you so much for joining me, Evan. I had an amazing time.
I did too. You have a good rest of your day, all right?
Yes, and thank you everyone out there for listening. Oh, before I forget, I always shout out all my patrons at the All That Glitters level. So one final Patreon shout out. Jeff, thank you so much for being a patron. I really appreciate it. And thanks everyone else for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.